Hey guys, welcome back to another Clash Royale video, and today we're going to be talking about the next round of balance changes in Clash Royale, which are coming exactly 9 days away from today on Monday the 7th. So I figured it was time that I give you guys my balance update wish list as I do at the end of every single season. And I want to share with you guys 10 cards that I want to see changed in the January balance update. But before we get to that though, I want to share with you guys a couple of official posts by Clash Royale on Reddit that might shed a bit more insight of what the actual cards we might see changed in January. So I found one Reddit post over here, guys, that was titled The Ultimate Balance Wish List. And in this post, he says a couple of things. He says heal and elite barbarians will not be mentioned. And then he lists 5 cards: Goblin Giant, Snowball, Magic Archer, Dark Prince, and Sparky. Those 5 cards he talks about. And the official Clash Royale Reddit account responded by saying, "Good job. Our January balance changes are actually making changes to 3 of the cards mentioned here, and 1 that you chose not to mention." So remember, guys, the 5 cards mentioned were the Goblin Giant, the Giant Snowball, the Magic Archer, the Dark Prince, and the Sparky. So 3 of those 5 cards will be changed in January, with the Magic Archer buff being confirmed as well. So over here on another Reddit post, somebody asked for a buff for the Magic Archer, and the official Clash Royale account responded by saying yes. So that one right there potentially confirmed of the 5 on this list over here. And of course, the heal and elite barbarians were the cards that he didn't want to talk about. And of course, the Clash Royale account did say 1 of those cards will be changed as well. And on another post over here on Reddit, we have the Freeze spell, which is a hugely discussed card this meta. And this post here says, "Can Supercell explain why Freeze is the only spell to deal 100% damage to towers?" And once again, guys, the official Clash Royale account responded by saying, "Remind me in 9 days," which of course 9 days is the exact time until the next balance update. So potentially a change coming to the Freeze spell in January as well, which honestly I wouldn't be surprised because Freeze is dominating right now. But that is the official information, guys, of what we know will be coming in January. Potentially a Freeze change, Magic Archer buff potentially confirmed. Then we have this list over here, guys, with 3 of these 5 cards being confirmed and 1 of those 2 cards up there being confirmed as well. So let's go ahead, hop on over to Royale API, which is a fantastic website to see the use rate and the win rate of cards, which I'll use to back up my theory for the 10 cards on my balance update wish list. By the way, guys, these are using the Grand Challenge stats. If you're wondering why not ladder, Grand Challenges have tournament standard or equal level gameplay, whereas on ladder, you have unequal level, which makes your stats not really reliable. But let's go ahead here, guys, and jump into my Nerf list first. First and foremost, guys, number 1 card on my Nerf list is the Barbarian Barrel. Yet again, the number 1 most popular card in the game, a 50% use rate, which is extremely unhealthily way too high. Like, Poison Spell is number 2, and that's only at 29% use rate. Barbarian Barrel, guys, is simply too strong. You gotta nerf the damage a bit more or some other stat as well. So Barbarian Barrel is number 1 on my nerf list over here. Number 2 on my nerf list is the Battle Ram. The Battle Ram, I think, has been too strong for a decent amount of time now. And honestly, it makes a lot of decks feel stronger than they actually are. For example, like the Barbarian Hut Battle Ram decks that dominate right now, I think the Battle Ram is a huge problem in those particular strategies, guys. It is simply way too punishing, deals way too much damage for a 4 elixir card. If you don't answer it immediately, you're taking some massive tower damage. So that right there, guys, is number 2 on my balance wish list. Nerf the Battle Ram. Number 3 over here, obviously the Freeze spell. has been kind of crazy this meta, and almost every single deck in the game you can throw in free spell and be better off than before. Like, I've seen Lava Hound decks that have freeze, I've seen Golem decks that have freeze. Like, when you have every different archetype in the game using the free spell, you know there is a problem. So free spell is number 3 on my nerf list. However, if they do nerf the free spell, I hope they don't nerf it too hard. I do think it is a really cool card to have in the meta, and previously it was extremely gimmicky at top ladder gameplay and basically unusable at tourney standards. So I hope whatever they do to the free spell, it still remains a viable card in the game, because I think it is a really cool one. Now, the 4th card on my nerf list, some of you guys might not be happy to hear this card on my list, and that is the 3 Musketeers. This card, guys, this card has been absolutely insane for a very, very long time. Before you get mad at me right now and say, Shane, don't nerf the Musketeers, they are fine, let me go ahead and kind of show you something right over here. So on Twitter, this guy by the name of Alp123, he makes these amazing kind of like graphical representations of the meta. He posted this image right here. Some of you guys might remember it because last season I talked about it as well. But this chart here is an illustration of the top 10 Grand Challenge meta and the win rate relationship between the cards. If you don't understand what the graphs mean, don't worry too much. Basically, the main takeaway is 3 Musketeers are way too strong. Right here, for this season, guys, in December, the 3 Musketeers are dominating every other archetype, as you can see over here. And in November, the previous season, they also dominated as well, which is funny because obviously the Electric Collector was nerfed in December, but somehow, some way, the dominance of the 3 Musketeers has grown from season over season. Now, if you guys still don't believe me, though, Rumham or Seth from Clash Royale, who is the main balance guy at Clash Royale, he actually responded to these tweets a little while ago. The tweets have since been deleted, so unfortunately I don't have them here to show with you guys today. But basically, if I remember correctly from reading them a couple weeks ago, he acknowledged that the 2 Musketeers were a bit too strong for several months in a row. He said that they are aware that their win rate has been way too high for several months, but the problem is they aren't quite sure yet what the best way to nerf them is, because obviously the single Musketeer is a bit weak, but the 3 Musketeers are too strong. So how can you nerf one card without breaking the other card? So going back to Royale API over here, guys, the single Musketeer has a win rate of 35%, which honestly is very, very low. So how do you nerf this card up here without affecting the other one? So obviously, in a perfect world, you would somehow detach both of those cards. Maybe keep the 2 Musketeers as 2 Musketeers, but change the single Musketeer to a new card called the Royal Musketeer, and that way you can change the stats independently. Or the other idea that I saw on Twitter, which I thought was pretty interesting, was give a stat buff to the single Musketeer, which obviously would also buff the 3 Musketeers, but at the same time, change the elixir cost of the 3 Musketeers to 10. Because right now, if you just change the 3 Musketeers to 10 elixir, you would break the card. However, if you buffed the single Musketeer and then change the elixir cost of 3 Musketeers to 10, it might still be viable at 10. If you're wondering, Shane, but what about mirror? That would break the game. You would never be able to mirror it. In case you guys didn't know, when the 3 Musketeers were first introduced into the game, they actually did cost 10 elixir, and the mirror also costed 10 elixir. So that argument is invalid 100%, guys. But we now actually have confirmation from the man himself, Seth, at Clash Royale, that he is aware 3 Musketeers are a problem and have been for a very long time. They just aren't quite sure yet what the best way to change this card is. In my opinion, I think the perfect solution is to separate the single Musketeer and the 3 Musketeers somehow, some way, and that way you can balance the stats independently. And then I think that is the end. Oh no, we got one more card over here. One more card on my nerf wish list is the Barbarian Hut. This card is extremely frustrating to face against, and every single meta for the past couple of months has had a couple of no skill Barbarian Hut decks that have very high win percentages as well. This card, guys, is so easy to use and so like overpowering. It needs a nerf, either the Barbarian spawn rate or the health or the timer. Whatever you do, the Barbarian Hut needs a small nerf as well. It is honestly just one of the most frustrating cards to face off against because it's so tanky and it has so much offensive pressure as well. So that right there is the end of my nerf list. Nerf Barbarian Barrel, nerf Battle Ram, nerf 3 Musketeers, nerf Freeze, and nerf the Barbarian Hut as well. 5 nerfs in total. But where we nerf a card, I buff a card as well. Let's go ahead, cancel that, and go on to my buff wish list. Starting out from the very, very bottom of the list, guys. Look at this. Right here, once again, here we are, month after month. The Goblin Giant, still one of the worst cards in the game. Introduced in September, it is now going to be January. I really, really hope we see a significant buff for the Goblin Giant in January. Why did I say it like that? That's weird. Anyways, Goblin Giant, guys, it's kind of like the Royal Recruits, where it's been like basically bottom of the bottom for several months in a row. And I gotta say, guys, just buff it already. Just give it a good old buff, because the Goblin Giant has been bottom for way too long. In my opinion, a couple things that I would do. Number 1, give it more health. Number 2, make it attack a bit faster. Or number 3, make the Spear Goblins that spawn out afterwards spawn a bit faster as well. Those 3 buffs are my ideas for the Goblin Giant. Not all 3, maybe like 2 of the 3, but regardless, buff the Goblin Giant, guys. It needs some love pretty bad. So the next card here, guys, on my buff wish list is the Cannon card. The Cannon card, in my opinion, got a nerf out of nowhere. I think way back, was it October or November, it got nerfed. And since then, it has been pretty bad. Like, it's right now at a 34% win rate and a 0, basically less than a 1% use rate, which honestly is very, very low. I think it is a cool card. It has one of the coolest skins in the game, so I definitely think a buff for the Cannon card would be justified. Maybe just undo the nerf they did back in November or October, whichever it was. Obviously here, Magic Archer buff was pretty much confirmed on Reddit. In my opinion, just undo the nerf that it got way back in November. I am honestly shocked that it didn't get buffed in December even, because when you have a card go to the bottom of the bottom after one balance update, I think it's a pretty good indicator that it was nerfed too hard. So I hope they undo the nerf for the Magic Archer. Right now, guys, it's one of the worst cards in the game, hands down. Like, I would even, like, if it was draft, I would choose Bomber over the Magic Archer. I think that says pretty clearly how bad that card is right now. Now, the next card on my buff wish list is right here, the Sparky. The Sparky is a really cool card, and honestly, it hasn't really ever had a good old chance in the meta, especially with the introduction of the Electro Dragon in November. There are so many hard counters for the Sparky, so I definitely think the Sparky needs a buff as well. Not too sure what the best way of buffing her is. However, I do hope she gets a pretty solid buff in the January balance update. Moving on here, guys, we have one more card, I think, one more on my buff wish list. Right here. You guys might be surprised to see it, but that, of course, is the Royal Recruits. This card, pretty interesting, because here we are, the beginning of December, like the first week of December. You go on social media, and what do you see? All of the pro players in Clash Royale crying about the Royal Recruit buff. Nerf this card, just delete it from the game. It's way too no skill. It deserves no place in the meta. It's way too strong. And here we are now at the end of December. Nothing was changed about the Royal recruits, and they only have a 41% win rate, which is honestly extremely low. So it's kind of funny how like Royal recruits right now are pretty close down to the bottom of the card list. And everybody was crying about that. I mean, at least the pro players were all crying about it at the beginning of December, and nothing's changed. And now it is pretty weak once again. Honestly, the only thing that happened was at the beginning of December, everyone was kind of interested in trying the new card out or the new balance out. So everyone was using it. But, you know, give it a week or so to cool off. And all of a sudden, bowlers right here start becoming more meta. Mega Knights and stuff like that, like more splash damage cards come back into the meta to counter the Royal recruits, and their use rate drops. So at the first week of December, guys, they were obviously, you know, pretty popular. But like I said, give it a couple of weeks, the meta shifts, more counter cards go into the meta, and the Royal recruits right now are, in my opinion, in a pretty bad spot. So I would love to see a small damage buff for the Royal recruits. I would keep them at 7 elixir, obviously, but I do feel they need a bit more damage to make them worth that 7 elixir, guys. So I don't know. Let me know if you agree or disagree, because the Royal recruits at 41% win rate, it's pretty low. It's pretty low. It's lower than the Dark Prince, and I think Dark Prince could probably use a buff as well. But the Royal recruits are, I think, a pretty cool card. I really enjoy using them, so I hope they get buffed sometime in the near future as well. I hope that Clash Royale kind of just isn't kind of okay with recruits being the way they are. I hope they get a buff sometime in the near future. Now, those are the 10 cards on my buff nerf wish list. To summarize, nerf the Battle Ram, nerf the Barbarian Barrel, nerf the Musketeers, nerf the Free Spell, and nerf the Barbarian Hut. For buffs, we have buff the Goblin Giant, buff the Cannon card, buff the Magic Archer, buff the Sparky, and buff the Royal recruits for 10 cards in total. Very quickly here, guys, I want to talk about a couple of cards that aren't on my list. Number one is the Expo. The Expo, you know, was a big discussion in the pro community for several months in a row, saying Expo is too weak, it needs a buff, etc., etc., etc. And here we are in December. 3 of the first regular global tournaments were all won by Siege decks, 2 of those being Expo strategies. So I think, personally, the Expo is perfectly fine the way it is. I think when you have 2 of the 3 global tournaments being won by Expo, one of them being Mortar, it's a pretty clear indicator that Siege, I think, is perfectly fine the way it is. Another card that I want to talk about, guys, is the Witch. The Witch and the Wizard at the same time are 2 cards that the community often complains about, because on ladder they can be extremely powerful. However, at equal level gameplay they are fairly weak. So the Witch right now has a 17% win rate and a 2% use rate. That is that's pretty low, guys. Let's go ahead and change the sorting to win percentage and see how that changes the list over here. So all the way down here, guys, the second lowest win rate card in the game right now is the Witch. You know what the third lowest is? The Wizard. So it's a pretty clear indicator that you can't use ladder stats to judge the balance changes, because on ladder, stuff like Witches and Wizards are pretty often like over leveled at the lower trophy ranges where they dominate. They are extremely frustrating to deal with, especially at the middle of the trophy ranges, like at 3,000 to 4,000, where you'll face people that have maxed out Wizards, maxed out Witches at level 10, and they are so frustrating to deal with. So obviously that is more of an issue of over leveling than card balance. Hopefully sometime soon we get some sort of solution to deal with card over leveling on ladder. Maybe they can make it so that people that have maxed out Wizards also face other people that also have maxed out cards, and that way they aren't picking on lower levels. But these 2 cards for sure, I would say they are a bit weaker for sure. Like 20% win rate with the Wizard, 17% win rate with the Witch, is a pretty clear indicator that they are pretty weak at equal level gameplay. However, they're just way too over leveled on ladder. So guys, that is the end of my balanced wish list. Let me know if you agree or disagree with anything on my list. If you had 10 cards for your own perfect balance update, what 10 cards would you change and how would you change them? Would you nerf the wizard? Would you nerf the witch? Would you buff the 3 musketeers? Do you think I'm absolutely crazy for all of the cards on my list, or at least one of them? Share your feedback down below. I really enjoy doing these balance update wishlist videos for you guys. So guys, that is the end of the video. Really hope you enjoyed it. If you did, make sure to leave a like, subscribe for more Clash Royale content. Thank you so much for watching, guys. We will see you in the next one.